Well, welcome. I'd also like to start by acknowledging that we're on Wajapunga land, paying my respects to elders past and present. And we're going to do this tonight. We're going to do a tag team, and I'm going to get Carol Adams, who's the Mayor of Kwinana, who's here.
Hello.
Is going to kick off, and she's going to talk a bit about really why Kwinana is really passionate about an outer harbour downtown Kwinana. Then we'll come back and talk a bit about what that means for Fremantle, and why the City of Fremantle has been broadly supportive of that idea, and then we'll come together and answer any questions you like. So I'll go over to Carol.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm not very techno, so if I stuff this up, I'll be going backwards and forwards. I'll look for the youngest person in the room to operate forward. Put on 1.5s and I'm good. Look, thanks for the opportunity to give an overview of the City of Kwinana's vision for a new port in Kwinana. This is nothing new. A new port in Kwinana is something that has been in planning documents since the 1950s. And what happened back in, I suppose I'll start at the beginning. Back in August, July, the City of Kwinana were getting quite concerned. They were hearing from industry that there was a lot of businesses closing, there was a lot of uncertainty in the industrial area. So the City of Kwinana decided to kind of take a bit of a leadership step and thought that they would bring together leaders from, we had 23 hand-picked people. We had a forum, and there were people from government, industry, environment, the investment sector. And we looked very narrowly focused to start with about what we could do to try and invigorate the Kwinana industrial area itself. It became very clear during the course of those discussions that we couldn't look very narrow at Kwinana. We had to really look at this as a regional opportunity. So the City of Kwinana took all the information that they'd learned from those discussions, and we did our own research, and we came up with the Indian Ocean Gateway proposal. In the meantime, the government announced the sale of the Fremantle Port lease, and so that really galvanised us into action and to talk to our neighbours as well, because we saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to try and influence the government to make sure in their lease documents and in the contractual clauses that there is either a cap and transition or a migration to an outer harbour in Kwinana as part of a requirement on a new owner. So that's just a broad brush start. If I can sit down, sorry, I can drive this. So I suppose, why is the outer harbour important to Kwinana? It worked. So put simply, the planning documents are saying that by 2050, 750,000 people will be living in our region, not just Kwinana, but in our region. And there is no strong employment or economic driver to try and assist, stimulate the area, provide young people with jobs. So that's what we're very concerned about. We came up with a proposal, just to put you into a bit of perspective here where we're talking about. If I may, you're all very familiar, I hope, with this map. But we have Tonkin Highway, then we have Rowley Road, Ankertel Road, and this is where we're proposing a stage 1 and stage 2 of an outer harbour. We have the proposed row 8 that is going through, proposed then at the time to be going through. Who knows what's going to happen here. And I must say from the outset, the City of Kwinana has not had a formal position on row 8 or Perth Freight Link. What we've been trying to portray is that there is a better alternative if the government takes a good step back and have a good look at what's proposed. And of course we have the inner harbour, or the Fremantle port here. So what's an outer harbour? A lot of people actually get quite confused. We think we live and breathe it. But of course an outer harbour is a harbour that is actually on the coast going into Coburn Sound. And an inner harbour is of course Fremantle Port, which goes up into the Swan River. So we're advocating for we're advocating for a staged transition to a full working port, which will mean containers, motor vehicles, bulk goods, dare I say livestock, scrap metal, etc. Anything that is now coming into Fremantle, we want to have a full operational working port into the future. And I will add that the City of Kwinana works with 5 other regional councils, a voluntary regional organisation for the last 30 years. So we have Rockingham, Kwinana, Coburn, Fremantle, East Fremantle and Melville. And whilst we all might have differences of opinions with the actual configuration of this piece of infrastructure, what we do agree with is it is actually needed, and it's needed to be started and planned for now. I mean, Fremantle, Coburn have issues and replacement of where an intermodal might go. Rockingham have some issues with rail. Fremantle have issues about potentially whether there should be a full transition or whether you wish to keep some containers, and I'm sure that Brad will talk about that later. But as I said, we are actually all in principle support. Brad, next one, please. So, this is the Western Trade Coast. It was set up by the government a few years ago, and where it is, it's the land that runs from the AMC through to the Rockingham Industrial Zone. The red line here is an industrial buffer, which we hope is soon to be legislated. And what the industrial buffer does is give certainty to the businesses that are in that area that they won't be encroached on, and certainty to those people outside of that area that industry will not encroach on them. And in here we also have a very environmental area, which is the Mount Brown, which is an area just, it doesn't quite show up. Are you familiar with Mount Brown area?
Yeah, it's up, yes, behind the AMC there.
That's right. So, next one, thanks for that. Okay. So we're proposing to set a staged development, and following consultation with many people, we've been picking up certain information along the way. It really does need to extend an extra kilometre southwards, and it will also require a breakwater. The combined length of the full build-out, stage 1 and 2, is 6 to 7 kilometres. So it's quite a large port. We're proposing what we call a set of land-backed port, which means it comes out and is built out into the Coburn Sound. And this allows Cape-sized vessels to use it, because at the moment in Fremantle you can't get Cape-sized vessels. It also allows rail on the port berth. We're proposing an intermodal, which means that the cargo goes just from the ship to rail or ship to freight, instead of having an intermodal which is over here, so it saves duplication. Thanks, Brad. Okay. So I suppose the Perth Freight Link, as we know, is designed to ease congestion in Fremantle Port, but the trucks will still go into Fremantle for the next half a century and beyond. And we say that ours is a lot better proposal in the long term. So by building out a harbour, freight movements will flow into the Western Trade Coast in coming years and decades, and this option does take trucks out of Fremantle and into Kwinana. Yep. Okay. Industry and investors are also agreeing out a harbour is the best option, and we've had discussions with large superannuation fund managers as part of our research, and they are saying that the government doesn't have to fund this. They can do this in partnership with the government, or in some circumstances they said they'd be willing to fund the outer harbour themselves. Of course, the government is always responsible for road and rail. And why? We know businesses are closing and some areas jobs are being shed. We know businesses want certainty and they want to go into an area where there is room and there is land to expand. Fremantle doesn't have this. The Kwinana industrial area is about 6,000 hectares with only 2,000 currently being utilised. The one thing we do have is lots of underutilised vacant land. As a council, we can now certainly encourage industry into the protection zone once it's legislated. An example is food industries that are being moved out from other areas. They might be a bit smelly. Food processing is one that we'd certainly be trying to encourage into this area. They provide employment for low skills, and we're actually on a transport route. Kwinana has a really high unemployment problem. We have something like 20% youth unemployment, and that's 18 to 25-year-olds, and senior adult unemployment is 10%. So there's a real need, looking at it just isolated, to really start getting something happening. Part of it is the protection zone, and then of course the outer harbour. And of course, it's not just about, as I said, Kwinana. We know Coburn has some high employment, Rockingham, and looking eastwards, we've got our friends in Armidale and Serpentine, Jarrahdale. Major benefits, and now this is at full build out, annual revenue of 42.4% of 4 billion, with a further 28 billion indirect annual revenue. Direct employment, freight transport links, and the Indian Ocean Gateway Protection Zone, which was said would be legislated. Where are these figures coming from? The Western Trade Coast Integration Assessment Plan, a very big body of research that was done a few years ago, and that's been extrapolated onto today's terms.
Can I ask a question on that? So the direct employment of is that
full stage one?
That's within the whole buffer zone. It's not just port employees.
No. It is the full area of full build out. Made improved efficiencies of port operations with an intermodal rail facility adjacent to the port, not 3 kilometres away. Again, a better solution for addressing Perth's freight congestion issue. New residents and commercial development opportunities in Fremantle, which Brad will touch upon. Some points to ponder, let's just go very quickly. Investment in the outer harbour means using existing or planned roads. We have Tonkin Highway. Raleigh Road is already in reserve. Ankertown Road through to Thomas Road is already a high, wide, low, dangerous, good corridor. There would be need some extension of Ankertown Road, but most importantly, there will be no tunnels and no homes lost. A lot of people have asked about the environmental side of it, because let's face it, Coburn is a beautiful piece of sound there. So we contacted James Point, Proprietary Limited, or the people who did the environmentals for them, which was a private harbour. They had already got their environmental approvals before it actually ended up going belly up, and it's now in the Supreme Court. We consulted with their environmental people, and they had provided a preliminary assessment on that. It's basically saying the land-based option is seen as much more environmentally appropriate. That said, there's no doubt there has to be very careful planning around Coburn Sound, and that's why we say there has to be a whole government approach to this. This is a beautiful area, and so we just need to make sure the key environmental factors are taken care of in this. Just recapping, 25,000 new jobs created, 42 billion added to WA's economy every year. You can read these. The outer harbour will bring 21st century technology and innovation. Heavy industry that relocated from Fremantle to the Western Trade Coast, and we say it logically belongs. Consultations so far, as I mentioned, our CEO and I, since Council passed our resolution last year to really go ahead and try and advocate for an outer harbour. We have briefed as many people as we can, and happy to do the Steve Dawes too. We've been to Canberra. We've been anyone that will ask for a briefing, like you guys, you're a very important stakeholder group to come. We'll go and speak to. And long-term dividends, increased economic output for the state, skilled and unskilled jobs, which is really important when you have such a high unemployment level. global competitive, and of course renaissance for the inner harbour at Fremantle. So really, when you look at, take a step back and have a look at the overall map, most of the freight will be coming from Kwinana. Any truck drivers in here? No? Okay. Most of the truck drivers we speak to are saying their freight comes from Kwinana. Why wouldn't you use Tonkin Highway, Ankertel Road, Rowley Road? And of course, the federal government gave funding for the construction of Munter John Road, which goes to Tonkin Highway. Tonkin Highway now stops. Our friends at Serpentine Jarrahdale think this is a wonderful opportunity to get Tonkin Highway extended, so that can then open up opportunities for them. Our friends in Armidale have said with the promise of funding for the Armidale Road, again there's more arterial coming down in a region of 750,000 people expected by 2050. Seems a long time away, but it actually isn't. And planning it takes so long to get everything together. What we will be asking for is a task force to be headed by an independent person, not of government, so that they can pull together all of the government agencies that are actually needed to make this work. Because at the end of the day, Brad, really everyone we speak to say it really just makes sense. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity not to have Fremantle Harbour asset tied up, sweating it. Nobody's going to do anything down our way for economic and employment outcomes. If there's nothing in the contract for the government, which the government are going to sign for the rest of the contract. So it's a little bit scrambled, but that's basically, we hope to give you a bit of a very broad brush idea. We don't have it, we don't have all the answers. I'm not a planner, I'm not an environmentalist, I'm not a geographer. But what I am is a mayor in a region that has significant employment problems and so many people coming that we really needed to be proactive and get on the front foot and really try and make something happen. And it's interesting, when we have spoken to the government itself, they themselves agree that an outer harbour is needed, but it's not if, it's when. We've got the Premier's language changing from 20 years down to 10 years, but even within the government there seems to be different debate about when this is going to be. The important point is that we try to say is the government doesn't have to pay for this. The investors that we speak to say there are large investment funds out there, superannuation funds, looking for new infrastructure projects. They see the outer harbour as the candy because there is so much room to expand here, some great business opportunities. So thank you, and I'll just hand over to Brad.
This is I think it's probably a nice segue in around the sale, because there's no doubt that a lot of this has come up because of the sale. And this is just an article from Business News that was out late last year in December. And reality is you can't do a port of anywhere near that unless you invest billions of dollars into transport infrastructure. And of course, so you'll be aware of that. Obviously, the sections, so you've got this bit between where it currently finishes at the Kwinana Freeway, and then ultimately extends through to Stock Road. Very expensive bit of road, around the $400 to $500 million mark for that bit of road, partly because a lot of it has to be bridged to reduce environmental impacts, but they'll certainly still be there. And then of course Section 2, which is the big question mark. There were approvals on Section 1 until recently, of course there aren't now, so that's been extended out probably for another 12 months, possibly to the other side of the next election, which of course puts all this back into a much more questionable space. Section Part 2 is actually the big mystery part. This was actually from Main Road's website, and that where the original proposal had it running up Stock Road with the whole series of flyovers of Winterfold South, cutting behind Dorsonia, and then flyovers at Carrington, where it hits Stirling Highway and then Martin Street. But then that was certainly one option, and of course more recently you would have heard about the alternative tunnel option, which no one is exactly sure where it goes, but again, from their website, it indicates it kind of cuts through Beaconsfield and Whitecomb Valley and pops out, so it comes after winterfall. So, and the tunnel bit alone is $1.3 billion for that 3 kilometres of tunnel. Like, again, very, very expensive bits of road. You start to add it all up, just what they've got there is probably around about the $2 billion mark, which, as Carol can argue that, builds quite a lot of port. But the point I would say is actually that doesn't even actually get it to the port. It pops up about here, which is that's East Fremantle Oval, and then if you come out of their tunnel, as per the current plans, you'll see this. And of course, there are no plans, certainly publicly available, on what that final last mile into Fremantle Port would look like. But at the moment, it looks like this, which is. And I put this up because it's actually just off Google. I didn't even. There's a lot. For those I talk at a bad time of day, I just use Google Maps. But the point is, this is actually the worst bit of the road. So there's no point upgrading all of it if you don't fix this last bit over the bridge, and then ultimately through this very narrow bit of actually with houses coming off it on Tyburn Road into the port itself. And the reason I say that is because you either have to spend a very, very substantial amount of money to get us through that, which main roads acknowledge will include the doubling of Stirling Bridge and an interchange at Canning Highway, and a solution for Queen Victoria Street and Tyburn Road, which no one seems to be able to tell me at least what that might look like in any form. So there's talks of trenches and flyovers and other things, but I think, to be frank, none of them are very appealing at the moment. But main roads own verbal estimates. Expect that last stage alone to be around the $500 million mark at least. So you start to see it becomes a very, very expensive bit of project to get this actually, to make the outer harbour expand. WA has been expanding for a long time, and the port needs to expand. And it'd be fair to say anyone who has the pleasure of driving High Street at the moment, and on a weekday morning would say there desperately needs to be upgrades to roads, and we would agree with that. And the question is to what extent that you actually go and do those, because it's ultimately we're at this interesting point right now, and that point is we need to choose where we put our infrastructure spend. Either we put billions of dollars into a road to the existing harbour to try so that we can double and triple in size, or we put billions of dollars into our outer harbour, and we then find, or we do a combination of. But the Perth Freight Link is the most expensive and biggest road in WA's history, and I think at the very least, and this is, I know there's people in the room who certainly support it, and there's certainly those who oppose it, but at the very least there should be a proper, if you're going to spend more money than we've ever spent on a road before, a proper cost-benefit analysis of options. I mean, for me that just seems like good, sensible approaches to these things, and that hasn't happened. There's only been one option that's costed, and there's been actually no comparisons of those. So certainly councils here, we'd rather see a view that saw greater investment both in the outer harbour. We'd like to see more investment in public transport, but there certainly also needs to be some improvements of those roads leading in. Even right now, we'd all agree with that, and we've certainly been advocating that very strongly in government that they should get on and do it and make those safer. And there's some pretty low cost things you can do to those roads to make them work much better right now. That should be happening. But I guess what's been interesting for those of you who've been following the whole debate around the outer harbour and the freight link, which are interesting one, is that stopped being called the Perth Freight Link. I think there was talk about calling it the People's Highway or something. But because it was about actually, it was going to be for private cars. And 92% of them will be private cars. I would say though, there is this thing called induced demand. If you build a big fat road, people will come and use it. That's the nature of road planning globally. It works. If you build bigger roads that get you there, people are rational human beings. They will get out there and use them. Same as if you build good public transport, people will get out and use them. So I guess for us, as a community, it's a bit of a decision around what's the kind of infrastructure investment that we really want to see within our region. And Council's view is pretty clear. We'd rather see $1 billion spent on light rail running from Fremantle to Murdoch and through Coburn Central, than we would $1 billion of extra freeway. So what's Fremantle's preferred solution? Well, one is actually that we see that the current, and the irony of this, let me just preface this by saying, the irony of our now quite radical solution is that it actually was government policy up until, in fact, it was bipartisan government policy for decades until about a year and a half ago. So now we've become quite radical in our solutions by actually saying, well, actually we're just asking to be consistent with the kind of planning that you had in place for decades on both sides of Parliament. And that is that the current Fremantle port should be capped, and there should be a cap, and there should be a transition beyond that to an outer harbour. Now there's a bit of a debate around what that number should be. That could be, look, it's at 740 now. My view is that probably in terms of impacts, ideally you'd bring it back down a bit. But probably between that 5 to 700, 5 to 800,000 pounds a year, I think, in the long term, means that you keep using the asset that's there now. And government rightly says, we don't want to just move the whole port right now because there's a lot of money invested in that asset. And we understand that, and we actually, again, consistent with long-term government planning, you think that it should stay. And then I partly admit that it's partly my nostalgia, but it's actually part of what I love about Fremantle is that it is a real place that has a real working port, and it does employ people, and that it is part of who we are. But that's and for me, though, I feel like it's entirely consistent with saying, though, that while we're going to keep that port going for as long as we can, we are going to put the bulk of our new infrastructure investment into the outer harbour. So that's certainly how we would imagine that cap and transition looking around container numbers, and you can see that as you approach probably about the mid-2020s, it's pretty evenly shared between the inner and outer harbour in terms of container numbers. Also, very much key to this is, so following off that, obviously, second harbour Kwinana is pretty vital. And this is whether it's latitude 32 or, there are lots of ways of carving this up. And this is where, and certainly Kwinana has been really keen on seeing that area utilised, which is a major area where you can actually put containers and do a terminal there, but also proper investment in road and rail. At the moment, we've got about 12-13% of containers coming out on rail. The vast majority still come out on trucks. And this is a really great opportunity to invest in really great infrastructure that gets more containers on rail. And actually sets up a proper 21st century freight system for WA. And ultimately that means that railway isn't required. And when you've got bits of road that cost extraordinary amounts per kilometre, and I often think, so I think road's about 5 kilometres from memory, costing close to $500 million. Compare that with the Forest Highway, about 100 kilometres, and cost about $700 million. Just to give you a bit of a sense of, this is actually just bad value. And I think we need to understand that we're actually getting really, really bad value out of some of these government decisions because they're so focused on trying to fit, in basically trying to squeeze through what was really 1950s planning into 21st century environmental controls, which should be there, and 21st century communities. And it's costing a lot of money. We're actually not getting, we could do a much cheaper road and rail system through to the outer harbour. One of the things that I would like to see happen sooner rather than later is around how Fremantle connects to its waterfront. Now I think there's an opportunity here with the outer harbour around Fremantle to actually reconnect to the port. Fair to say at the moment it's pretty bleak, and we feel when you're in the middle of Fremantle, you don't really feel like you're actually near the water. And certainly even that connection through to that the passenger terminal, which is, I always feel a bit mean taking these photos. When you go past the train, some poor people walking for hundreds of metres carrying their suitcase trying to find where the passenger terminal is and how to get there. This was about 40 degrees this day, and I just thought it was slightly cringeworthy. But this is what we currently have. This is the current situation. And it's actually a really important part of Fremantle's economy now as well. I mean, is that there are 57 cruise ships this year, 40,000 passengers disembarked into a car park with a very long walk to anything, if they can find their way at all, and it's only going to expand. So this is actually, I see the outer harbour and taking some of that pressure off Fremantle as an opportunity to improve some of these other aspects, like around how the city interfaces with the passenger terminal. Again, the idea that this is the best use of the South Quay, or what we call Victoria Quay East. We don't have a common usage yet, but the idea of the opposite of North Quay, where predominantly it's just a car park. It's a giant car park of some of the best land in WA. And one of the things we're just doing some work on, which we should have finalised within about a week, is what are the opportunities of moving, this is RoRo or roll-on, roll-off cars, opportunities of moving those things more quickly than we can. I know that, and certainly infrastructure-wise it's not as intensive as cranes and those kinds of things, moving those south as quickly as possible. So, and I don't even think that needs to happen very soon, but planning for that, so that we can actually start to see Fremantle actually start to reconnect with its waterfront. And you can imagine in these areas where you could have hotels and you could have a range of bars and different things and restaurants and all those kinds of things that go right down to the water. And for me, having the idea of having a working port on the other side of the water is pretty extraordinary and unique backdrop for a city that's increasingly been, tourism is part of Freo's future more and more, whether we like it or not. And I think Lonely Planet saying we're one of the top 10 destinations in the world to get to this year, I thought was probably a bit of an interesting turning point for us, where I think I want to be able to Fremantle to embrace tourism without losing its soul, without losing what makes us unique. Cities quickly seeing this area be transformed. This is obviously where the car yards were, and you've got the heirloom Fort Knox developments happening, and the Toyota site's being redeveloped. So that's pretty, but the best land's actually even closer, and you can see that there's a real opportunity to connect all that through to the water, and that's part of the conversation that we would like to have with government, and we've been pushing on, which is why we're supportive of this. We actually think there's a real win-win here. There's a win for the community of Kwinana, and there's a win for the community of Fremantle and for the state just to invest in their infrastructure. So that's actually why it's been really good to work with Carol and the other councils. And it'd be fair to say, it's been a really interesting and broad-based coalition kind of going, there's got to be a better way than the current approach. And that's been quite fascinating to watch. And whether we'll win this battle or not, is yet to be seen, but I think the evidence is on our side.
Two questions and one observation. First of all, I was born and bred in Freo and grew up, and Fremantle Wharf was a great place to grow up. Fishing over the edge there and catching endless blowies. But question one is, what is the current load of import and export, as in vessels coming to Fremantle, and between now and when stage one of the new harbour will be up and functioning, assume it does, are you going to get more and more congestion? In other words, vessels waiting out on the waters to offload or export? I'd say more import than export, where this country's going. Second question, if stage one of Roe Highway is built before the blue section, will that be up and running? The thinking is that's 45 trucks off the road. Okay, so my simplistic thinking is those that would be against it would be your truckies and your petroleum industry.
Depends where the containers are going, mate.
That's right.
They might be heading to Geraldton for all I know.
That's right. But what I saw was one vehicle carrying what 45 others.
Yeah, we could be speaking to the truckies, and my sense is.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what's the quickest way that they can get their freight to a port. And at the end of the day, if it's a quicker route to get to Kwinana, they'd probably be in favour of that rather than what they have on offer at the moment.
a lot of it's the stop starting. I think that is the major issue, the efficiencies of fuel quality.
Thanks. A quick question for Carol. Is it Kwinana's position that ultimately Fremantle would host only passenger ships?
Yeah, we would just, we can't cherry pick, we would like a full working harbour to come down to Kwinana.
So this
that
is,
would free
This is
up,
our point of difference.
and this is the point of difference, because we
yeah, I
say
just
that
wanted to make clear,
yeah,
be clear of that. I thought that
It wouldn't just be passenger. I think you've said before it'd be passenger, navy, and novelty. I think was the term.
Because we would say the north side of the quay there's also some wonderful, valuable land that the government could sell, could pay for infrastructure, new infrastructure.
Yeah. So look, I think
we all have a wish list.
that's a legitimate argument, and I guess my view is that I think I'd rather see that working port retained on the north side whilst the south side being opened up and the city connecting through.
So you're saying any of the Navy visitations would end up at the outer harbour as well?
No,
I think Navy would probably
no.
stay.
No, the
As would research vessels.
Because they tend to bring a fair bit of money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no,
as
Navy,
well.
Navy can stay for now.
Yeah, we don't want to give everything to Kwinana.
We don't want to be greedy.
Yes, sorry.
I'm just wondering, first I'd like to comment on how exciting this is, because I can see that people are going to win and there's going to be huge benefits for everybody. But if this is like the goose that laid the golden egg, and that golden egg should stay in public hands, it absolutely should. And I'm just wondering, just please, if people could we just have a show of hands who agrees with me that we do not privatise our ports, that we do not privatise our public assets, that we continue to keep our money for WA, for our kids, for our schools, for our health system. Please, everyone. Fundamentally, this is going to happen. It needs to belong to us.
And you know, at the end of the day, we just want it to happen.
Absolutely. But if you could, if your voice could be strong in reflecting what we all believe is right, that would be the best outcome, because we would win for generations. And it would be brilliant, and it would be such a good thing.
And can I say, our fear of the privatised port is that we just lose control. I mean, I think that's when we can influence government. We've kept out of this because there isn't a council position on this at the moment. But it'd be fair to say that I've certainly had concerns that privatised companies rightfully try and make profit. That's what they do, and they'll try and max out the asset. And there is a fear for us that we, in the process, while we're in the middle of this very complex planning and a major transition, privatising it midway through that, to me, makes not a lot of sense. It's not the right time. Chris?
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Atten. I'm the Director at Kwinana Industries Council. Our position on this is that we support the Indian Ocean Gateway for all sorts of reasons. But just on the comment that you made, we would actually prefer the port to not be sold, because we have a much better relationship. There's a profit motive, there's a harsh profit motive that doesn't exist when it's in public hands. And we have a much better ability to be able to influence as a customer of the port operation. So I'm with you on that one.
Thank you.
Don't get me wrong, but if that was sold to private industry, the way things seem to happen in this country, it would be, would the profits be going offshore? Would it be multinationals from another part of the world?
I think it's to pay down debt, I think.
That's how WA is going.
All right, now I'm aware of the time, I'll give people too long. We'll do a couple more here.
Yeah, just firstly, I think on your point about the Fremantle port, the new port should also be built with public money for the same reason. If that's built with private money, the end users are going to pay some more. But the question, Brad, is the reason. What is your reason for the cap of 500 to 700,000 containers?
Yep.
Is it? You obviously said it's not waterside, and I agree with you.
Look, there's no magic number, and it really depends on how much you invest in road upgrades. So you could, if you did nothing, you would cap it at 500. If you spent not a cent on the roads. If you actually improved, upgraded parts of high streets so there was much safer, and there was perhaps did it with slightly the golf course, and did this minor upgrades, you could probably push it up to 8 and still have reasonable amenity issues. Beyond a certain level, you need to spend a lot of money doubling the bridge. And I guess there's going to be a line there somewhere where at some point you're going to spend spend $300-400 million putting a new bridge across the Swan River. And I think at that point it's probably not worth it. So I guess that's what I'm trying to work out. There's no magic number, and I think that's probably to be worked through, but it's about getting, how can you do the transition and do it reasonably quickly, because I think it actually will be really good for the, for that region in a way that doesn't require huge rate upgrades in the interim.
I guess that's what I was asking for the reason, because if the reason's about getting the trucks off the road, I just identified where we've got some great inefficiencies where trucks go in full and come out empty, right? So you could have the trucks overnight, which effectively doubles your volume just by doing that, if people talk to industry. So, I mean, I'm happy to participate anywhere along the line, but I would urge both your councils who are going to see Barnett and try to convince him around this stuff, and I do support this stuff long term, but I think it's really important that everyone takes a bit of a breather. We put a hold on railway because nobody wants that road. It is an absolute waste of money to spend $2 billion to effectively do up the front yard, and you have to sell the port, which is worth $2 billion as well. It's mad, right? So that should be put on hold to start with. Let's work on improving efficiency, and then let's really engage all the stakeholders in the proposal. And I'm happy to sit down with you guys, happy to introduce it to the operators as well, who, you know, obviously they've got a fair bit of knowledge and say around the place as well. So, yeah, can I just urge you to do that, rather than just rush into it? I think it's probably...
No, I think it's good. In many ways, this is actually a conversation starter. I mean, some of this we're still working our way through rather than absolutely locked down. I think you make a really good point. In fact, I just have to share one other bizarre statistic that I read. So, Nahan acknowledges himself that all of the freight link and all that money will increase the value of the port by $1 billion. So I just think, where in the world would you spend $2.5 to $3 billion to increase the value of the port by $1?
But it's spent money.
Hey?
But it's spent money.
That's right. You only do it because
it's only our taxes.
You only do it because it's federal government money, not state money, but it's all our taxes. I mean, anyway, so I just thought, you're spot on. It's exactly right. So it's a stupid outcome.
And really what we're trying to do is kickstart the conversation, and we certainly have over the last 6 months. At least we've got people talking about the prospect of an outer harbour, how can we work together to do it, and all the people that we've spoken to, even people in government, we've always come away with great ideas. There's something more that we've included into our plan, so then we can expand it a little bit further. It's very much a working document, but I think we're going to get there, but it's not how, and we've done the why, it's the when, you know. And the longer it takes for the outer harbour to be even started, the more you guys are going to have to put up with congestion here.
Yeah, look, I think that if you knock off railway, that gives you a focus. That's the first step. Because they're going to still want to spend that $2 billion eventually. But let's do it down in Kwinana, but let's do it, you know, as part of the proper process.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it was good, I know, Chris, you presented to the Senate inquiry, and you put some I heard, because one of our officers were there, put some very good points across, so I'll come and have a chat to you about something afterwards.
I'm really astounded by the blockages that have been put forward for the outer harbour. And what I'm starting to think is that the whole Perth Freight Link is actually not about Perth Freight. It's actually about getting the ring road put in, which comes back to the Stevenson plan, the 1950 Stevenson plan. So I just want to get your opinion on, if the Perth Freight Link went in, and yes, there would be, you know, the harbour aspect, the amount of freight that would then also be, and the cars, because we know 92% will be cars and will be in jet traffic, heading up the western suburbs up towards Malaga. The original plan had a Stevenson Highway, which would come from Mitchell Freeway, around Herdsman Lake, through the middle of Boulder Park and down to Curtin Avenue, and complete that ring road that Main Roads had wanted. Do you think that this maybe is why there's such a blockage, because Main Roads actually want this ring road? Or
So, I mean, look, it's on the public record, this story. It is a story which, but it's been told by multiple people. Is that I actually think it's just, it's one of those, so everyone knows, so basically the story of the Perth Freight Link is that the state went through government asking for money for the outer harbour. after having a reasonably short meeting, came out and said, well, good news is we've got the money, bad news is it's not for the outer harbour, it's a road to the inner harbour. I mean, it was that kind of thinking, and at the time, Tony Abbott was the road building Prime Minister. He didn't build harbours, he built roads. It was that kind of dumb political decision making that actually wasn't linked to long-term planning. And I think for some unknown reason, despite a change of Prime Minister, it's stuck because people have invested in it and it's really hard to untangle. I don't really even think it's based on good. I mean, look, certainly that's a justification. The Hepburn-Stevenson plan and those roads are part of the justification for it, but I don't really think it's based on long-term planning thinking. It's about it's about toll roads. It's about kind of particular financial models that make it work and not work, and it's about
politics.
Should have more referendums.
Well, that's true. In other parts of the world, they do have referendums on infrastructure investment, which would be
Because we had it about the daylight saving, but it's an important issue like this.
All right. I probably should wrap up, but I want to say a big thank you to all of you for coming out and for listening, and I hope it was interesting. Thanks, Carol.